First News with Keeler in the morning on WIBX and WIBX950.com.
Dave Zumpano's on the line. He's been, Dave, I'm so glad you were able to sit here and listen to this.
Speaking of experts.
Good morning.
I feel like I'm an expert now.
Well, listen, you are.
See, I don't got Facebook. I got Keeler.
That's right. You'll be educated right there.
That's it.
Again, this argument that we're living right now is only about to get worse as schools go back and as the virus spreads. And oh boy, it's just going to get uglier and uglier as time goes on. So I want to ask you: do you have any comments on what you just heard?
Well, there's an old saying. I don't know if I can say it on the radio, but everybody has opinions are like something else. Everybody has one, but you don't want to hear from it, right?
That is true.
So here's
are you referring
I'm the lawyer,
to
right?
Dave? Are you referring to me?
Some would say.
Yeah. So being the lawyer, here's where I stand. I absolutely stand behind people's right not to get the vaccine.
Right.
Okay.
I think we all do.
And the other side of it is this. People who have the vaccine, chill out. If people don't have it, they get sick, they die. It's on them.
That's right.
The information shows that if you have the vaccine, even if you get it, it's basically. I know 5 people that have gotten it after the vaccine, and it's basically a sniffle. It's basically a cold symptom. So, I mean, not that we want anything, but I'm saying the vaccine's working, right?
Right.
So the vaccine's meant to protect people who want to be protected. For people who don't, that's their right. Now, I'm going to flip it around. I want to say it was the 80s or 90s, the government said we had to wear seatbelts. Do you remember that? They're old enough to remember, that wasn't a law. Remember, you can't tell me I have to wear a seatbelt.
I was one of those people that was against the, don't tell me I have. You can say my kids have to, but don't tell me. I was one of those people.
I'm still against it.
Well, right. I'm with you. So there are certain rights the government has to compel things when it's in the interest of public safety, and it doesn't relate to a human right. So driving a car is a privilege, not a right.
Right.
So they have the right to control that. Now, I think what you put into your body is more of a human right. However, they require you to get vaccines when you're born, or you can't go to school, all those things. Well, actually, they do. They require it, but you're not required to get it. You just can't go to schools.
Correct. Right. That's
the way
a lot
of people that have religious exemptions can't go to public schools and things like that.
And I think they're doing that. They're doing that right now, saying you don't have to work here, but if you want to be a healthcare professional, you got to get vaccinated or get tested.
Well, I would use the same argument. If you're not vaccinated for measles, mumps, rubella, or whatever, and you get them, even if you're in the public school, if everyone else is vaccinated, they don't get them. So, again, it threatens only the people who don't get the vaccines. It doesn't really threaten the people who do. So I don't understand the reverse engineering, where, everybody has to have them to go into this place or that place. But, hey, it's America. Free enterprise. People are allowed to decide who does and doesn't come into their venues. Government is free to put restrictions on things that are not right. And if you don't like it, change who you vote for. Yeah,
that's elections have consequences. The phrase of the year, or the phrase of the last at least 5 years. I will say that I wear my seatbelt. I just didn't want somebody telling me that I had to wear it.
Exactly. And you know what? I don't want somebody telling me I have to get the vaccine, but I got the vaccine.
Yep.
I mean, I got it because I think it's a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But I respect people who don't, but there's consequences. My daughter's pregnant, and she has not gotten the vaccine because she's concerned about that. And she's a nurse. So she's looking at the medical information, and she's not saying she won't get it. She says there's just not enough information. Normal to get a vaccine approved, it's years. This one was approved in months. And so, we just don't know. And I said, well, here's the other side of that coin. If it turns out that this is a really bad thing, well, then 200 million of the 300 million of us are dead anyway. So who wants to be left alone?
That's a very good point. Yes.
But in any event, that's not my expertise. That's just my opinion. So, but I do have an expertise on some things like estate planning.
Well, and I'll say that, none of us have any expertise, I guess, on the issue of the safety of vaccines. However, you pick and choose. Al and Mohawk has picked who he wants to follow, and it's it's computed in his head what all of that means. And I try to look at studies that are a little larger, and when they're larger, you're dealing with numbers, and the numbers really don't lie. That's how I feel about it. I want to ask you about, in your line of expertise, avoiding the double tragedy. And first of all, you can explain what that is, and then, of course, why and how we avoid it.
Yeah, so let me clarify something. I use the word expertise in estate planning. Ethically, I have to retract that. I can't say I'm an expert. There's ethical restrictions. So I'm going to retract that and say, no. I have a high level of knowledge in this area. I've been practicing it for in my 30th year.
Fair enough.
So
he's practicing
the double tragedy, right? We've got COVID. I'll tell you a quick story. Guy I've known for 30 years. We've worked together in business dealings. I see him out. He's 79 years old, healthy, still working. How you doing, John? He says, not good. What's the matter? Angie died. Angie's his wife. Yeah. And I said, what are you talking about? Angie's 65. She's healthy as an ox. No, COVID, and 5 days later, she's dead.
Wow.
And so that's real, right? What's also real was me talking to John, right? And so this double tragedy, let's talk about this double tragedy. We got 9/11 coming up, right? The 20th anniversary.
Yep.
We all remember it. We all remember what happened. It's personal to every one of us. But you don't know the second tragedy. We're not seeing the second tragedy. Some of us might, but many of us, most of us don't. What's the second tragedy? The second tragedy is when someone dies, whether it's expected or not expected is not even relevant. It's what happens after they die.
Right.
And what happens after they die is what we call in estate planning, at least we do it at the Estate Planning Law Center, we call it the second tragedy. Here's the second tragedy. What did they have? Hey, who can access their bank account?
Right.
How do we pay their bills? Oh, my gosh. And what it does, it begins what we call the morbid scavenger hunt. Now, this is horrific, right? Mm-hmm. Because now you just lost your loved one. And I got to be honest, whether it's expected or not is not even the issue, because once you lose them, you only lose someone once, and you don't lose them until they're gone, and then after they're gone, you deal with everything. And after dealing with all the emotional stuff, you're now having to deal with the legal stuff and the financial stuff and trying to bring it all together, and it's a nightmare. It's very traumatic for the survivors, okay? Same is true for someone who don't die. So let's say it's not COVID and you die, or the World Trade Centers that came down, but let's say you became incapacitated and have to go to a nursing home. Mm-hmm. I've worked with, I don't know if I might be probably in the thousands by this point in 30 years, of children or family members who have to go through mom or dad's personal stuff. It's so disruptive to them. Yeah. They feel so dirty. And this all happened because mom or dad didn't plan. So if your kid's listening right now and you're thinking about your parents, the trauma will be, A, mom and dad needs to go in a nursing home. And the second trauma is you now have to go through their personal stuff, which is traumatic to kids.
Yeah.
And so these are the second tragedies that happen. The second tragedies that happen. Somebody dies and they have assets, or they don't have assets, or they do, but they're locked up and we can't get access to them. And we got to pay the bills, but we can't. I mean, and then fees start piling up and late notices and all this stress goes to the kids or the spouses who are trying to work or trying to take care of their kids. These are tragedies. The tragedy of the loss is there. The second tragedy is what happens after the loss. And I'm not even talking about the mourning. The mourning is the personal tragedy.
Right.
The legal and the financial and the cleaning up of the mess is traumatic. It's a trauma.
Yeah.
And all that really, and I can't express enough, I wish somebody can follow me through a couple different clients, from ones who've done planning and ones who haven't.
Yeah.
People who haven't done planning and they come in, their stress levels through the roof, their anxiety, their fear, their frustration, and you ready for this? And the cost.
Right.
The legal costs and other costs are multiples, not 10% more, 20% more, 200% more, 300% more, 500% more, 1,000% more cost-wise. And then kids fight. Why do kids fight, right? You ever heard the story? Well, kids fight. What do they fight over? Number one answer people tell you they fight over the money.
Right.
They don't fight over the money. That's not what kids fight at. Let me tell you what they fight over. You ready? Mom is talking to Betty. You know, Betty, if anything ever happened to me, I'd like X. Another day, another time, she's talking to her son, Bob.
Right.
You know, Bob, if anything ever happened to me, I'd like Y. Well, now something happens to Mom, and Betty says, you know what, we got to do X. And Bob says, no, we got to do Y. And now what happens is they loved each other, but now they'll kill each other because they both want to make sure Mom gets what Mom wanted.
Right.
But Mom said two different things at two different times, and now they will kill each other to make sure Mom gets what she wants, and it destroys relationships. Mom, just write it down.
Right.
Just
I have
write
seen
it
it.
down,
I have to say,
fights.
I have seen what you're talking about happen on more than one occasion, and it totally.
Really? You know 3 people this happened to?
Sorry.
Now, then I would believe you. If you told me you knew 3 people, I'd say, I absolutely agree.
Yep.
This happens all the time. But here's the thing, Bill. People know that it happens, but they don't know why. They just assume it happens to other people. It always happens to other people. And my dad always told me, when you point, you ever point your index, your pointer finger? My dad always said, be careful who you point at because there's 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Yeah.
And so that's the truth. When you say, oh, my God, I can't believe that happened to them. Well, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. Now, anyone listening today, if you're one of those kids and one of those parents who hasn't done planning, I'm pointing at you, right? If you're one of the parents who hasn't been planning to protect the kids, I'm pointing at you. Anyone over the age of 18 needs a healthcare proxy and power of attorney. Now, here's the thing, and here's the thing, Bill, people don't get. Every one of you, every one of us has a plan. You ready? It's just whether it's your plan or the government. The government has a plan for everyone that doesn't have their own.
Right.
It's called intestate succession. It's what happens. The government does it. They say how it works. They say who gets it. They say who gets to decide if you live or die. They say who gets to get your assets. They decide all that. Now, if you're sitting here listening to this and you don't have a plan, yes, you do.
Yep.
The government's already written it for you. The question is, are you okay with that plan? And most people say, well, I don't even know what it is. Well, that's probably not a great plan then.
You know, it's funny. They always say you should work smart versus working hard. And the same thing could be applied to living that way. Live with the same concept. You got to live smart and plan to die in a smart way, because otherwise, it can get very, very messy and very ugly.
You know what I find the number one thing that stops people? Number one is their fear. They don't like talking about that.
Yeah.
Number 2 is money. It costs money. Well, here's the thing. Most people don't realize a plan today that now, for example, on our Guider platform could be as low as $300. If you don't have it, it could be as high as $10,000 after you die.
Right.
I mean, that's the investment, right? So you can look at it as, investment versus cost. Expenses are things that you expend and don't get a return on. Investments are something that you pay for, but you get a greater reward back for what you paid for. And that's really, really, truly what estate planning is. And what I think the reason why it doesn't get that rap is because no one's here to see the outcome when they didn't do it.
Right.
Yeah, nobody ever says, boy, I'll tell you. When I passed, it was a great idea.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're looking up above or down below, whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
But they're not really caring about what the ones behind, again, that double tragedy.
Yeah.
That double tragedy.
Interesting double tragedy. And it is, it seems like the first tragedy isn't as bad as the second, to be honest, because it can get very, very ugly. Dave Zumpano, as always, thank you so much. Estate Planning Law Center. We appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.
You do the same. Thanks.